I didn't hear the chainsaw until it screamed through the trunk. By the time I sprinted out my front door, barefoot, coffee still in hand, it was already too late. My oak tree, a 50-year-old giant that shaded the west side of my home and cooled my attic better than any AC unit, let out a long, slow creak. And then, like a giant exhaling its last breath, it fell, right onto a brand-new obsidian black Mercedes G-Wagon parked illegally at the edge of my yard. For one glorious, stunned second, the street went silent. Then came the shriek. Karen Wilcox, our HOA Vice President and part-time menace, came charging across the street like she was leading a cavalry, her phone already filming and her hair fluffed like a lion mid-pounce. You maniac! That's my car! I blinked at the fallen tree, then down at the chainsaw resting in the grass, still purring, and finally at the man holding it, a trembling landscaping crew guy with eyes wide as hubcaps. He stammered, "She said cut it, she said it wasn't allowed." And that's when it hit me. She cut down my tree without notice, without a permit, without even knocking on my door. Just walked up to a tree on my property and ordered a hired hand to slice it in half. I opened my mouth to speak, but Karen beat me to it, waving her phone in my face like it was a badge. "This is destruction of property. You owe me for damages. This is negligence." That's when I laughed, not because it was funny, at least not yet, but because if Karen had just stayed in her lane, kept her passive-aggressive notes to herself, or taken the courtesy to at least read our HOA's bylaw amendments, which, as a matter of fact, I had written, she'd have known one critical detail. The tree was protected, and now, so was I. The tree was more than wood and leaves. It was memory. Planted in 1972, it stood tall long before Silver Maple Estates was even an idea. My grandfather, a World War II vet and passionate arborist, planted it with his own hands. I have the photos, a skinny sapling, him with a shovel, my mom as a toddler playing in the dirt. When I inherited the house, I restored the roots with an arborist, installed solar-friendly uplighting, and had it registered with the city as a landmark tree. Karen knew none of this. She only knew that the oak dropped acorns on her sidewalk, that it shaded too much of the public lane, that its bark was unsightly, and she'd been stewing for months, sending letters, filing complaints, and quoting obscure neighborhood clauses she interpreted through the lens of whatever power trip she was riding that week. And now she'd decided to take action. The crew she hired, illegally contracted, no city license, no tree-cutting permit. The cut itself, performed without notice, violating the Heritage Flora Protection Ordinance. And the car? Well, that was poetic justice. She'd parked her Mercedes directly in front of the oak that morning, claiming the curb was community property. Never mind that city code marked it as part of my easement. Never mind that she had a 2-car garage sitting empty while she paraded her luxury SUV for all the neighborhood to admire. So, when that oak timbered down with all the grace of a slow-motion disaster and that hood caved in like a cheap tin can, I couldn't help the smirk that spread across my face. "Karen," I said, voice as even as I could manage, "you just committed a felony." Her face flickered. Shock, confusion, rage. "Excuse me? Tree vandalism, city-protected flora, plus trespassing, plus illegal use of a contractor. Want me to keep going?" She took a step back. "I'm calling the HOA board," she barked, "and the police. Please do, because what Karen didn't know, what she never bothered to find out, was that I was not only a licensed preservation advocate, but also a part-time legal consultant for a firm that had worked with the city on landscaping ordinances. I didn't just know the rules. I helped write the ones she just broke. The officers arrived in 20 minutes, 2 squad cars, 1 from code enforcement. Karen came out shouting, gesturing to her crumpled Mercedes like she'd just witnessed a meteor strike. "He did it on purpose," she yelled. "He waited for my car and dropped it right on top." I sipped my coffee, standing beside the fallen. oak like it was an art installation. "Officer, I have home security footage. You'll see me inside the entire time. She hired an unlicensed contractor, cut down a protected tree on my property, and destroyed her own vehicle in the process." Karen's face fell. "That's a lie." "It's time-stamped," I said. "Multiple angles, audio too." When the footage played, Karen barking orders, the chainsaw guy nervously cutting, the groan of timber, the screech of metal. One officer actually chuckled. Another took notes. Karen was cited on the spot for destruction of city-protected flora and trespassing. Her landscaper was given a court summons for operating without a permit, and her Mercedes insurance would laugh her right off the phone. The tow truck came at noon. Karen stood on the sidewalk in a stiff blouse and yoga pants, arms crossed, sunglasses perched on her head like a crown. I watched from my porch swing, Echo the macaw chattering beside me from his covered perch. Every groan of the hydraulic winch echoed through the quiet cul-de-sac like a funeral dirge. Her beloved Mercedes, once a symbol of status and HOA superiority, was now a contorted mess of crumpled steel, roof caved in, windshield spiderwebbed to the point of collapse. The tow driver winced as he secured the straps. "This thing's toast," he muttered, more to himself than anyone else. Karen didn't respond. Her mouth was a tight white line. I saw her glance just once at my tree stump, still massive, even on its side, then snap her gaze away when the truck rolled off, leaving deep tire tracks in the sidewalk flower bed she once fined my neighbor for stepping into. I stood and walked to the edge of my yard. "Would have been cheaper to buy a rake," I said. She whirled around. "You think this is funny?" "I don't think it's just about the most perfect example of karma I've ever seen," I said, smiling. Karen's nostrils flared like she was about to unhinge her jaw and swallow me whole. "You're getting kicked off the HOA," she spat. "We'll hold an emergency vote." I raised an eyebrow. "You'd have to call a quorum first, minimum 20 households, and they'd need to believe I did something wrong, right now. All they know is that you ordered someone to illegally chop down a protected oak tree on my property. I'm the vice president." She snapped. "Not anymore," came a voice from behind. We both turned to see Rick Lane, one of the few HOA board members I didn't despise, walking toward us in jeans and a sport coat. A folder was tucked under his arm. His expression was calm, firm, and deeply amused. Rick stopped beside me and offered a nod. "Mark, just came to give you a heads up. Emergency board meeting this morning. You'll be happy to know Karen was removed in a 4-1 vote." Karen's jaw dropped. "Wait, you..." "What?" she gasped. "You can't remove me without cause. Destruction of property on private land, misuse of board authority, and violation of city environmental codes," Rick said. "I think we've got cause covered, and your landscaper ratted you out in less than 10 minutes. Said you paid him, cash under the table, and told him it was an eyesore the neighborhood would thank you for." Karen's eyes widened. She looked from me to Rick, then back to the stump, as if expecting it to grow legs and walk away. "You people are insane," she hissed, backing away. "You'll regret this." "Doubt it," Rick said. Karen stormed off, heels crunching across her immaculate gravel border. A few neighbors peeked from their windows. One even gave a polite golf clap. Rick turned to me, handing over the folder. "Thought you'd appreciate this. It's the letter of removal, plus a formal apology from the board." I accepted it with raised brows. "Didn't think you guys had it in you." "Neither did I," he said, "but she's made enemies on just about every porch in this development. The dog leash citations, the mailbox paint scandal, and now this, cutting down the neighborhood's only heritage tree. She basically did the recall campaign for us." I nodded toward the fallen oak. "Still feels like a funeral." Rick scratched his chin. "We're actually looking into grants. Might be able to get an arborist to plant a new one, memorial plaque and everything." "A tree for Karen's legacy?" I said, smirking. "More like one to spite her memory." I laughed. "Keep me posted." He walked off with a wave. I stood there a moment longer, staring at the broken roots and scattered leaves. The old oak had been here longer than me, than the neighborhood itself. It had shaded family barbecues, Sunday coffee, childhood games. Seeing it felled by arrogance and ignorance wasn't just maddening, it was personal. But the damage had awakened something in the neighborhood. By that evening, a petition had circulated online, residents demanding stricter limits on unilateral board decisions, improved transparency, and a vote to amend the HOA charter itself. Over 70 signatures in 24 hours. Barbara from 3 doors down offered to draft the legal changes. Marvin, who'd once been fined for putting up a "Vote Here" sign too early, pledged to run for HOA president himself. For the first time in years, people cared. Not just because of the tree, but because of what it represented, how fragile power becomes when it's used like a weapon instead of a shield. Karen didn't show her face for 3 days. When she did, it was to retrieve her overturned flower planters from the edge of her lawn, wearing massive sunglasses and a hoodie pulled tight. Someone had written "Tree Murderer" in sidewalk chalk on the curb. I hadn't seen who. I didn't ask. Later that week, a city official stopped by with a clipboard, hard hat, and a portable moisture meter. He snapped pictures of the stump, took measurements, and handed me a copy of the municipal citation they were filing against Karen. The fine? $5,000 for destroying protected heritage flora. And that's just the beginning, he said, flipping pages. City council's looking to increase penalties after this. Plus, she'll be liable for any replanting costs if we use public funds. I offered him a bottle of water and sent him on his way. Then I sat on the edge of the stump, ran my hand across the grain, and let the quiet settle in. Echo, ever the opportunist, called out from the porch, "Karma!" I raised my coffee mug in salute. We weren't done. Not yet. But the roots ran deeper than she'd ever guessed. By the following weekend, my stump had become something of a pilgrimage site. Neighbors who used to nod politely but say little were now stopping by with muffins, folding chairs, and fresh outrage. They brought stories about the fines, the threats, the dozens of passive-aggressive notices Karen had hand-delivered with sticky notes and phrases like community values and aesthetic harmony. She once cited me for leaving my trash bin out for 32 minutes past pickup, Barbara said, crossing her arms as she sipped lemonade beside my stump. 32 minutes. She made my kid take down a chalk mural because it violated visual uniformity. Another neighbor chimed in. She gave my wife a warning for wind chimes, Marvin added. Said they were too expressive. The stories poured in like confessions from a cult that had just been deprogrammed. I was equal parts amused and shocked by how deep her tyranny had run. Still, something had shifted. With Karen gone, there was a sense of cautious optimism in the air. The board held its first open forum session in over a year. Residents showed up. Not just the usual 3 retirees and Marvin with his clipboard. Families, college students, newcomers, even the McLean twins, who'd famously racked up over $1,000 in noise fines for their high school band rehearsals. And me? I'd been officially offered a seat on the interim advisory board, at least until the next formal election cycle. I declined. Not because I didn't care, but because I preferred working in the background. Policy was my playground, not politics. I offered to help, revise the bylaws instead. They accepted. It was therapeutic, sitting at my desk late into the evening, crossing out bloated language and replacing it with clear, enforceable, fair regulation. I added a clause explicitly protecting registered heritage trees and native flora. Another one that required board members to recuse themselves from voting on matters that directly affected their own property. And the best part, a clause granting any homeowner the right to call for a vote of confidence if 15% of residents petitioned in writing. No more unchecked power. That was the kind of legacy I wanted. Of course, Karen didn't go quietly. 2 weeks after her resignation, she returned to the neighborhood Facebook group under a new name, Concerned Mom 2024. The profile picture was a sunset. Her posts were subtle at first, long rants about lawless neighborhoods and the dangers of unchecked wildlife. People ignored her. Then someone screenshot her IP address from an old moderator log and matched it to her real name. She vanished overnight. But the damage had been done to her car, her position, and her credibility. Now she was just another homeowner, paying dues, like everyone else. Well, assuming she paid them. Last I heard, she was fighting the city fine in small claims court and had already gone through 2 lawyers. Neither lasted more than a month. Meanwhile, I got a letter from the city. Dear Mr. Mallory, following the incident involving the unauthorized destruction of a protected oak tree located on your property at 17 West Aspen Lane, the City Council has approved funding for a replanting initiative. We are pleased to inform you that you have been selected as the first participant in the Silverleaf Renewal Project. Pending your approval, a 15-foot live oak, grown from native seed stock, will be planted at no cost to you, with continued support for the next 5 years to ensure healthy growth. We also wish to extend our gratitude for your assistance in protecting city-protected flora and raising awareness in your community. Please sign and return the attached form. I didn't even read the rest. I signed it that afternoon and dropped it off myself. It felt like full-circle justice when 2 Saturdays later, a city truck pulled up with a young crew and a tall, slender oak swaying in the truck bed. They planted it right beside the old stump. We mulched it together, watered it, and tied it carefully with support stakes. A few neighbors gathered to watch. Echo whistled cheerfully from his porch perch. One of the city workers handed me a small brass plaque that read, "Planted in honor of the silver maple oak, preserved in spirit, remembered in roots." I installed it beneath the tree later that evening, just as the sun dipped behind Karen's roofline. The new oak wasn't as tall, not yet, but it had time, and so did we. The neighborhood had changed, maybe for good. ChatGPT said, absolutely, here's. Part 4 of HOA Karen Cuts My Tree falls right onto her luxury car. Continuing the story with another 1,000 words as we approach the full 5,000-word goal. The new oak had been in the ground for 10 days when Karen made her move. She waited until just past midnight, maybe thinking the neighborhood was asleep, maybe thinking the new tree wasn't official yet. But Echo, my macaw, always sensed when something was off. I'd learned to trust him more than most humans. "Warning! Warning! Intruder!" he screeched from inside his covered cage, flapping so violently he nearly tipped his perch. I pulled on a hoodie, slid on sandals, and flipped on the backyard lights, just in time to catch the figure ducking behind the old stump. At first, I thought it might be a raccoon. Then I saw the glint of silver, garden shears, and a blonde bun poking. From beneath a hoodie, Karen. She was crouched next to the new tree, blades in hand, one of the supporting ties already sliced. The trunk wobbled slightly, like a child learning to stand. "Karen," I said, stepping off the porch, "I wouldn't do that if I were you." She froze. Then slowly, dramatically, she stood, like a cartoon villain revealed in the final act. "This is harassment," she snapped. I stared at her. "You're on my property, again, with shears, about to damage a city-protected tree. Again." She opened her mouth, then closed it. Her eyes darted to the fence line, the sidewalk, the security camera mounted over my garage. "This tree is out of compliance," she said finally. "There is no such thing," I replied. "It's city-approved. You already lost this war." She scoffed and turned to leave, but not before muttering, "The neighborhood looks ridiculous with that thing." "Now, By the time I finished filing the police report, Karen had already deleted her Concerned Mom 2024 profile and retreated into the shadows of her house. This time, however, she wasn't just facing a civil fine. Vandalizing public landscaping, even attempted, is a misdemeanor. Trespassing on private property while attempting it is a second charge. Combined, they came with a hefty fine, community service, and if the judge felt particularly annoyed, up to a year of probation. I didn't press charges, not because she deserved a break, but because I knew something she didn't. The neighborhood had turned on her completely. When I posted the security footage, just a still frame, no gloating caption, just her crouched in mid-snip, onto the Silver Pines community page, the comment section exploded. "You've got to be kidding me. Did she really try again? She needs help and a hobby. Put up a fence with spikes." Within the hour, 3 residents organized a petition to permanently ban Karen from serving on any HOA-affiliated committee ever again. Another posted a flyer for a new block party, Replant and Reconnect, with the new oak as the centerpiece. And just like that, something shifted again. I'd always kept to myself, maybe because of the animals, maybe because I assumed no one else cared. But the fight over the tree hadn't just removed a tyrant. It had reminded people why neighborhoods are supposed to matter, not just to enforce uniformity, but to protect something meaningful. So I leaned in, helped Marvin finish, writing the new HOA charter amendments, donated one of Echo's old perches to the community garden, hosted an Ask Me Anything for folks curious about native trees and how to get theirs protected. The next board meeting was the largest turnout in neighborhood history. Over 70 homeowners showed up. People who hadn't voted in 5 years suddenly wanted a say. Barbara from down the street brought brownies. Rick got re-elected unanimously as president, and a local teacher named Janine became our first ever resident at large, to serve as a liaison between renters and the board. When Karen arrived, yes, she came, no one made eye contact. She stood at the back of the room, arms folded, a pale imitation of the woman who once barked orders about mailbox colors and the evils of bird baths. She left before the meeting ended. That night, Rick and Janine stopped by my porch with a clipboard. "We're naming it the Community Oak," Rick said. "Thought you might want to say something at the ceremony next weekend." I hesitated. "Isn't that a little much?" "You're the reason it's still here," Janine said. "Let us be a little much," so I agreed. The day of the ceremony was sunny, breezy, perfect. Neighbors gathered with folding chairs and mason jars of lemonade. Echo sat proudly on his perch with a little sash that read Neighborhood Watch. Kids ran barefoot through the grass, playing, and tagged between potted succulents and homemade lawn signs. When it was my turn to speak, I didn't use a mic. I stood by the new oak, hand resting gently on its trunk, and spoke like I would to an old friend. "This tree is new," I said, "but the roots go deeper than you think." Laughter rippled. "You all know what happened. You saw it, you felt it, and maybe at some point you thought, this doesn't matter. But it does, because what we choose to protect says everything about who we are." I gestured toward the yard. "It's not about the tree, it's about all of us, finally choosing to grow together." The applause surprised me, not because I didn't expect support, but because it felt real, earnest, like the sound of a community waking up. Echo whistled, then shouted, "Karma!" The crowd howled, and for the first time since the chainsaw's scream shattered that quiet Saturday morning, I felt at peace, because the oak had fallen, but in its place, something even stronger had risen. 3 weeks after the ceremony, a certified letter arrived in my mailbox. The envelope was thick, embossed with legal lettering. At first, I thought it might be another HOA formality, maybe the formal ratification of the new bylaws, but when I opened it and saw the name at the top, Wilcox, Karen A. V. Mallory, Mark S., My stomach actually laughed before my brain caught. Karen had filed a lawsuit. According to her claim, I was liable for negligence resulting in property damage, emotional distress, and reputational harm due to public shaming, targeted harassment, and retaliatory social media defamation. I flipped through the pages. Her Mercedes repair estimate was laughably inflated, $82,000. She included screenshots of the community's Facebook page as evidence, including someone's meme of a Mercedes with a tree photoshopped through the sunroof and a caption that read, "Parking Karma, Plant Edition." She claimed I had engineered a public takedown of her leadership and was personally responsible for the ruination of her standing in the community. It might have been hilarious if it weren't so brazen. I called my lawyer, Olivia. She read the packet, snorted once, and said, "This is fluff." But because Karen was nothing if not persistent, I told Olivia to file a countersuit for malicious prosecution, abuse of process, and additional emotional distress, including the midnight trespassing incident, which we now had multiple angles of on camera. Olivia filed a motion to dismiss. The hearing was set for 2 weeks later. In the meantime, I didn't say a word about the lawsuit publicly, didn't need to, because Karen, in her eternal quest to control the narrative, leaked it herself. She posted a passive-aggressive thread on the HOA forum titled "When Neighbors Become Bullies," in which she accused certain unnamed individuals of weaponizing popularity to destroy the dignity of our community's founding members. The response was brutal. Dozens of replies poured in. "You destroyed your own credibility. Nobody cut that tree but you. We watched the footage with our kids. It's a lesson in consequences." One man even posted a poll. "Should Karen be held accountable for her lawsuit? Yes." 97% no, 3%. 2 votes from the same surname. By the time we reached the hearing, she looked smaller, like her voice had deflated. The judge, a no-nonsense woman in her 50s with half-moon glasses and a patience level just below sea level, flipped through the files and sighed so loudly it echoed. "In the courtroom, you hired someone to cut down a tree you didn't own," she asked Karen. Karen straightened her shoulders. "It was a community hazard. I took preemptive action. And then you sued the owner for the result of your actions. He allowed the tree to fall." The judge raised an eyebrow. "Gravity allowed the tree to fall, Ms. Wilcox. Courtroom chuckles aren't supposed to happen, but they did." In the end, the judge not only dismissed Karen's case with prejudice, but also granted our countersuit. Karen was ordered to pay $9,400 in legal fees and issue a written apology to be posted on the HOA website for no fewer than 60 days. She also received a civil warning from the city about filing further nuisance complaints. I didn't gloat much, but I did frame the judge's final order and hang it on the wall above Echo's cage. He stared at it for 3 days, then, in perfect pitch, repeated what he must have heard in court. "Gravity wins." The months that followed felt like a new season. The new oak tree thrived. The mulch ring was expanded. Kids built a little bench around it with the help of a local Eagle Scout. A bronze plaque was installed, funded entirely by neighborhood donations. Every month, the HOA sent out newsletters that included a Roots and Branches section, stories submitted by residents about small wins, cool landscaping ideas, and neighbor shout-outs. Karen's name never appeared again. I still saw her occasionally. Usually early mornings, when she walked her tiny white dog in oversized sunglasses. We'd make eye contact. I'd nod. She'd look away. Eventually, she put her house on the market. Rumor was she was moving to a strict covenants development out near the golf course. No trees over 10 feet, no non-native plant species, every lawn precisely uniform. She'd be in heaven. The day her moving truck arrived, I happened to be watering the oak. A breeze rolled in, rustling the leaves overhead. For a second, I swore it sounded like the old tree sighing in relief. Echo flapped and squawked, "Bye-bye, Karen!" She flinched, her shoulders hunched, but she said nothing. Just climbed into the front seat of a new Lexus SUV and drove off. We held a block party that weekend, not in celebration, at least not officially, but there was cake and music, and someone even made a shirt that read, "Gravity Wins, Silver Pines Chapter." I wore mine proudly, and as the sun dipped low behind the rooftops, casting long shadows over the fresh mulch and strong roots of a new legacy, I finally understood what my grandfather meant when he said, "Trees remember what people forget." They stand, they endure, and sometimes when they fall, they take the rot with them, so the rest can grow.